Hey YouTube, it's Zyloc with Media Hindsight, and today we are going to look at not so retro game. It actually came out in 2014. It's actually only been out for about 5 months, and that is a game that's caused a lot of controversy recently since its release, and that is, of course, Destiny. I got it for the PS4, also out on the Xbox One. As you guys know, this game had a huge budget behind it, the largest in video game history, with $500 million that Bungie put towards developing this game. And what I would assume from the way the game turned out, and a lot of people have been talking about, a lot of that was put towards the advertising campaign, which there was a lot of it. It was in our face the whole time that this game was being developed and up until when it got released. So what do I think about Destiny? I'm still playing it now, so it's got to be at least decent, right? And I would say for the most part it is. But let's go ahead and take a look at Destiny, the game that came out from Bungie. It's September 9th, 2014, to a lot of critique, to be sure. Let's go take a look. While this isn't the defining factor of Destiny, it is worth noting that for the $500 million put into this game, consumers aren't getting even close to the content that Bungie claimed would be playable on day one. If you are one of the many that got captured by the excitement for this game, by the intense advertising campaign and developer interviews, you will be sorely disappointed by how deceptively small the quantity of missions, multiplayer maps, and story development is. As far as longevity goes, your mileage will vary. You really just need to ask yourself a few questions. Can you look past the complete lack of story? And lastly, do you mind playing the same content, what little there is, over and over again? If you can say yes to these questions, then you may very well enjoy your time with Destiny. All content issues aside, is Destiny fun to play? That's the real question that needs to be answered. And it absolutely is. Gunplay is tight and responsive, melee attacks are powerful and feel great to land on enemies, and enemy AI is pretty competent, so it adds a nice bit of challenge. Gameplay is by far Destiny's strongest asset and will be what will keep you coming back day after day, whether that's a player versus enemy mission or an online multiplayer Crucible deathmatches. Destiny plays much like any of the Halo games, and this is a great thing. Why fix what isn't broken? What Destiny does add is a nice character progression perk system that will scratch the itch of any role-playing game fan. When you begin the game, you pick a class and the race of your character, and then you attempt to customize the look of them to your liking. Unfortunately, this is a very, very bare-bones set of tools you have to work with. Your selection here does not affect anything in the game outside of your character model, and even then, the only part that you will see is your head during the time in the tower and during certain cutscenes. This is a complete letdown. I wish this would have made a lot more of a difference. I would have hoped that selecting different races may have affected the story, but unfortunately it doesn't here, which is just lazy. There are 3 distinct classes in Destiny, and each have 2 subclasses with varying abilities. These characters, while having different abilities ranging from grenades, supers, and overall perks, don't especially play that differently from each other, and the differences in statistics are pretty inconsequential. That doesn't mean that this selection isn't important though, as certain classes will interest players more than others. The defining feature of each class are its super abilities in general. The Titan Striker subclass has the Fist of Havoc ability, which lands a powerful area of effect attack on all surrounding enemies, while the Titan's Defender subclass has the Ward of Dawn, which places a protective bubble on the field that will help you and your teammates alike. The Hunter and Warlock classes follow in the same line, but their subclasses are all a bit more offensively focused. These supers have a cooldown associated with them that can be decreased in several different ways, such as killing enemies, gaining orbs of light from supers used by other teammates, and even equipment bonuses. This segues nicely into the leveling and perk system in Destiny. As you kill enemies and complete missions and bounties, your character will gain experience and level up to a max of 20. Each level you gain will give you an extra skill to choose from for your character's skill trees, gain the abilities to equip stronger armor and weapons, and affect your overall damage to and from enemies. The skill trees have many great abilities for you to unlock, such as new double jumps, grenade mods, and perks to your supers, attribute upgrades, and various other perks. The best part is that you can change these on the fly from the game menus as you need to give yourself different loadouts for different objectives. Finding just the right perks to fit your playstyle and weapons is one of the most fun things to do in Destiny. And you can also freely switch between subclasses as well, depending upon your needs. Throughout missions, you will run across enemies that randomly drop weapons and armor with various uses. Each player can equip 3 weapons at a time from 3 categories, and there are primary weapons that consist of various rifles and hand cannons, special weapons that consist of sniper, fusion rifles, and shotguns, and lastly, there are heavy weapons such as rocket launchers and machine guns that can really lay down the hurt. While each gun has their own uses, the special weapons have the ability to really change your playstyle from a close to medium to long range. Each character also has 4 slots of armor and 1 for an aesthetic class item. Armor will increase your armor stat and also give you extra benefits like extra ammo stock or faster melee attacks. All armor and weapons come in different rarities, and shortly after the first couple of story missions, you'll start finding uncommon and rare equipment that can also gain experience and have extra statistics that could be used to benefit your character further. This is done through a small skill tree that all items are randomly given. Upgrades are made with Glimmer, which is basically space cash, and other materials that you can collect on missions and from dismantling unneeded loot. This adds a sense of excitement for each new piece of loot found, and the rarer the loot, the more extensive the skills and upgrades. Leveling your base level via experience ends at level 20, but you still gain experience toward new abilities, weapons, and armor though. From this point, you must find rare armor that has the light statistic on it. Depending upon the rarity, there will be a certain amount of light for each piece. As you level the defense of each, this will also increase. Your first 20 light will get your character to level 21, and every 10 light after that will give you 1 more level to a max of 30. You will need to find legendary and exotic equipment to get to these higher levels, and they can be extremely difficult to acquire, and the worst part is most of this is based on luck. You will finish all of the story missions around level 18 or 20 in about 10 hours. This is ridiculously short for such an epic gaming experience that Bungie advertised to us. There is absolutely no excuse for this with all of the resources they had at their disposal. But thankfully there is more content outside of the abysmal story or lack thereof. There are 5 strike missions, which are relatively more challenging levels with various waves of enemies and a unique boss at the end. These are a ton of fun the first or second time you play them, but you'll soon realize that these strikes are all you have to play from a PvE perspective until you're at least level 28 and can do the raid. These get monotonous fast and the rewards are few and far between. The only redeeming part is if you are diligent enough, you can earn Vanguard marks for each one done, to a max of 100 marks per week, and then you can use these to purchase legendary armor and weapons. This is great, but with the fact that you get 4 marks per strike and can't receive any more after you gain your 100 for the week, you are lucky to be able to purchase 1 piece of equipment per week. This just feels like unnecessary padding, and Bungie knew this would be necessary to keep people playing, as there isn't anything else for them to do. This can be very frustrating, and I've had several friends stop playing at this point because it's just not rewarding or fun. The chance of just randomly receiving legendary equipment from drops is ludicrous, and more often than not you'll end up with an item that your class can't even use. Don't even get me started on exotic item drop chances. Exotic equipment is the rarest of the rare and have some of the most powerful abilities that can really change up your class significantly in really fun and interesting ways. But unless you are doing raids or just really, really lucky, you may not see one for hundreds of hours of play. This is beyond frustrating, but thankfully there is a weekly event that spawns a shopkeeper that sells a selection of random exotics every weekend. These exotic armor pieces and guns can be purchased with strange coins, which can be found from random drops and weekly challenge missions. This weekly event is one of the main draws for me, as I love rare and powerful loot, and earning coins to purchase them kept me playing throughout the week. These hard to find items are certainly time consuming, but for the dedicated player, they will eventually come your way. Lastly, there is a weekly 6-player raid that was advertised to take the typical group 10 to 20 hours to complete on their first run, but as expected, Bungie let us down, and teams were finishing it in less than 5 hours. And once completely understood, could be done in under 1 hour. Bungie, who was even testing your game? A bunch of drunk monkeys or something? This is ridiculous. But there is raid-specific gear that can only be acquired by doing this with a group, and it's the most powerful equipment. But you'd have to do this raid many times over just to get a small handful of the items to drop. Now, bear in mind, this raid, it's called the Vault of Glass. It's definitely the most fun piece of content in Destiny. It's well designed, but the fact that they made all these promises about it is a letdown to end all letdowns, really. I understand how raiding works in other MMOs, but this does not excuse Destiny from a lack of quality content to keep a player interested. If you're more of a competitive player, the multiplayer Crucible is also a great option. Game modes ranging from 3v3 skirmish matches and 6v6 large-scale battles with vehicles are all here, but the low quantity of maps available, and that only 2 to 3 of them are available to certain modes of play, can lead to repetition rather quickly. Fortunately, the gameplay is super tight, so if you can get a good group together, playing some control matches can be a lot of fun. Finding a game only took about 30 to 60 seconds most of the time, so matchmaking works fairly well. If you're worried about the level and equipment of your level not matching up to the others in the Crucible, fear not. While certain perks on rare gear can give players a bit of a leg up, levels and statistics do not matter, and all competition is normalized. So a level 3 can do just as well as a level 28, assuming the skill level is on par. You can also gain experience and loot as matches unfold, so if the campaign leaves a bad taste in your mouth, enjoy multiplayer knowing you are making progress. One more thing that I must mention is the loading times in Destiny. Each time you go to a new planet, go back to the tower, or enter a Crucible match, you'll have to sit through a 30-second screen of your ship floating through space. While collecting different ships is a cool feature, the fact that they are so few, uninteresting, and are just glorified loading screens for the player is just plain lazy on the developer's part. Some type of space combat mission or mini-games may have made this just a tad easier to stomach, but as is, it just eats up more of your time than it needs to. The only real benefit is that Bungie does allow you to tinker with your character during these transitions. Two things that I must give Destiny credit for are its amazing visuals and sound design. Graphically, Destiny is a treat to behold. Each planet from Mars to Venus is beautifully built and distinct. Each alien race is vastly different and interesting in its animation and architecture. The skyboxes, weapons, and effects are wonderfully detailed, while the soundtrack and effects really do just bring the world and action to life. The soundtrack is definitely one of the best of 2014. So it's odd. After all of these negative things that I have to say about Destiny, why do I play it on a nearly daily basis this long after release? Well, the simple truth is that the game, while repetitive, is just a lot of fun to play. And once you get past that initial grind and get to the higher levels, make some friends, and acquire some cool exotic equipment, it gets really addictive to level that equipment up and try out further builds. Bungie has been making an honest effort as well to make the grind not as tedious over the past months by patching issues that player base was having. Destiny is a solid base for an epic adventure if Bungie would put their resources toward churning out more original, quality content at a faster clip and not charging an arm and a leg for it. I've spent hundreds of hours in the world of Destiny since its initial release, and while definitely a grind at times, I always find myself looking forward to going back to the rock-solid gameplay and the chance of some cool gear or small upgrades to my character. Destiny has potential beyond what it was in its initial release. Hopefully the work is put into fulfilling the promise of what should have been.
There was a time when we were much more powerful. But that was long ago. Until it wakes and finds its voice, I am the one who speaks for the traveler. You must have no end of questions, Guardian.
So overall, Destiny was probably a letdown for most people, but at the end of the day, the game is a lot of fun, and I find a lot of satisfaction in going back to it day in and day out. So there's definitely a lot to be said for that, and that's really all that matters in the end. So for me, Destiny is going to get a 75 out of 100. Yeah, it's got a lot of faults. Yeah, Bungie didn't deliver on all of its promises, but it's a really solid game, and if you enjoy multiplayer, deathmatch, and you enjoy PvE with your friends, you will definitely get your money's worth out of Destiny. Don't necessarily listen to all of the haters, but definitely know what you're getting into going into it. That's why I wanted to share this review with you guys. And as always, I'm Zyloc with Media Hindsight, signing out.